Thank you. Welcome everyone to the Education Committee. I'll start with the agenda. Can I ask, do we have any apologies?
There's one apology from Fiona Gilchrist, who's one of the religious reps on the committee.
Thank you. Any other apologies? Thank you. Okay, the next item is declarations of interest. Do we have any? No, thank you. Okay, we'll move on to item 3. Summer 22 presentation by the Head of Education Services. So, Siobhan McColgan.
Thank you, Convener. We don't have a written report for committee this morning, but we do have 2 young people who are joining us via Teams to share their experience of the Summer 22 programme. One is a pupil participating and one is a former pupil who supported the programme. We also have David Gordon, a Quality Improvement Officer, who coordinated the programme, joining us. The Summer 22 funding was just over £118,000 and was used to support a programme of activities through the school summer holiday period, with the aim of supporting children and young people aged 5 to 14 in low-income families to access activities, childcare and food. We worked with a range of colleagues and consulted with children and young people and their families to inform the design of the programme, and the programme included culture and leisure camps at Barrhead and Eastwood High and Include Me Too summer camp. There were also other summer activities designed to improve the health and wellbeing of our children and young people, which were provided out with the Summer 22 funding by a range of partners including Social Work, Police Scotland, CLD and the Carers Centre. So I'm going to pass over to Kayla Rocks, who's joining us in Teams from Cross Arthurlie Primary School, where she's a Primary 5 pupil, to speak about her experience of one of the summer camps.
I went to the summer camp in Barrhead High. Other people were on holiday and I was bored but excited about camp. I was also a wee bit worried on the first day as I didn't know anyone. I did art, drama and lots of sports. My favourite was football. I love football. We got lunch. I really liked it as there was lots of cucumber and I love cucumber. On Thursday and Friday I went to Max as my mum was at work. I really enjoyed camp.
Thank you, Kayla. I'll hand over now to Elise Kelly, who's a former St Luke's pupil, who's going to speak about her experience with Include Me Too.
Hiya. I got involved with Include Me Too club through a YPI project when I was in 3rd year at St Luke's High School. My team won £3,000 for the charity and I have since volunteered at a range of their services and I now sit on their board of trustees. This year they've put me on a 12-month YPG placement through Work ER from February 2022 to February 2023, where I'm working in the office doing a range of admin work and having an opportunity to work at a range of sessions when required. I really struggled to decide where to go after 6th year, and after applying for a course that didn't feel right to me, Include Me Too Club has given me a wonderful opportunity to learn new things and explore different pathways. They are putting me through an SVQ Level 3 in Management, which will hopefully aid my application to study Business Enterprise at Strathclyde. Over the summer, 114 children with additional support needs and from low-income families took part in our club, some for a few days and some for most of the summer. Flexibility and choice were key parts of the summer programme, offering families the choice between 1 day and 5, mornings, afternoon or all days. We found that families who had signed up for only morning or afternoons had come back to ask to increase to full days where possible, and we managed to increase a handful of days to full week slots. We even found that participants being picked up at lunchtime were so upset that they were leaving, parents were asking us to enable them to stay the full day. Every morning, children had a choice of cereal, toast, breakfast bars, fruit and fruit juice. Lunchtime saw children enjoy a mixture of packed lunches from our Social Blend Cafe with filled rolls, crisps, fruit, Freddos and flavoured water. Tuesday was Domino Pizza's day and Thursday was McDonald's, so it was mostly healthy meals. There was a range of snacks available for the children through the day if they got packaged, and a chance for them to take home if they needed anything. The programme provided parents the chance to continue to work, and from our evaluation we found that it also highlighted that they had a break from their caring duties for a child who had an additional support need. Here are a couple of quotes from parents. The programme made my life stress-free, with the girls in a routine, having lots of fun, which I could not find the time to do. It made me be able to work during the summer without days off, which I could not afford, and mostly my wee girls had a ball and made memories they will keep forever. The programme allowed me the chance to go to work without having to worry about the needs and safety of my child being compromised. Not only did it allow me to work, but I am delighted with the personal development in my child because of the programme. Thank you.
Thank you, Elise. So we're going to end with a short film that captures the impact of participation in summer activities on children and young people. It is only 3.5 minutes, so hopefully that will come up now.
Hi, my name's Isabella, and what I like about this camp is all the fun activities like dodgeball, drama, art. My most favourite thing is art, I think, because you have all the different lovely, bright colours. Hi, my name is Francesco, and I like this camp because there's football and basketball and sports.
The summer programme is Include Me 2 Club's summer club for children and young people. Today is actually National Play Day, so in the school today we've got lots of activities. We've got sports, games, arts and crafts, we've got fort building, we have got outdoor play, we've got cooking, baking, we've got lots of different activities going on.
We have been providing the children in our care with breakfast, lunch and a snack to take home to ensure that children, although they're not getting their school dinners, there is still something else in place, and this has been vital. It's all about ensuring that children's rights are met and their right to play is met, regardless of their ASN disabilities and mental health.
I think it's really important just for kids to get out and be able to socialise with a different group of people, especially kids that in my group that are starting primary school. A lot of them are really nervous when they first started, so I think it's good that they've had this experience.
I think it's key, especially for kids with ASN, just to give them a bit of routine. I've got a little cousin who attends the clubs, and honestly the progress he's made through social interaction, coming on, trying new things, honestly it lets kids reach out their comfort zone, and the effort that's put in and the attention to detail is phenomenal. It's never been like this in any other club that I've ever attended or participated in.
There's another kid out that was going to come to the summer group. What would you say to them?
Do you want to be my friend? Oh, I would definitely say come here because it's very fun and you get to do lots of fun things. I say, hi, you will be my best friend? I would say it's really fun. You will meet new friends and you get to do lots of stuff. Friday we go down, Saturday we
Excellent. That was great. Quite entertaining. Unusual maybe for a committee to actually see the kids having fun. And I'd just like to thank Kayla and Elise for your excellent presentation. And great to hear that you enjoyed it. It's also great to hear the impact it's having, not just on the kids obviously, but the parents and the families. Do you have any questions?
Not so much a question, just to thank all of the team that worked on it to make it possible. I know a lot of it was done very last minute and at short notice. And of course, thanks to our partners for being involved. I think that was fantastic. I was fortunate enough to be down at Carlingbar on National Play Day to see some of the children playing interact with them, which was fantastic. So it was great, and thanks, I think, to the Include Me Too team, who were fantastic in all of the work that they do delivering those services. I think it certainly gives us a lot for the future to be able to look at the play schemes, how they're managed and how they're run over future years, because I think we learned a lot from it. I know Include Me Too learned a lot from it, and I'm sure our other partners involved in our other sites learned plenty from it about what really works. And the most important thing was the fact that all of the children appeared to be having an absolutely fantastic time, and they were well cared for, and that's one of the vital issues going forward. So yeah, a fantastic programme of summer events, and I think at a very much needed time. It was probably more, I think, than we've been able to do in the past, but it was fantastic to see that come together, and everybody pull with all the efforts that were made to make sure it was extremely successful. And I certainly didn't hear anything or anybody complain about it. Everybody seemed to be enjoying it and making the most of it, which was great.
Thank you, Councillor Buchanan. I believe Councillor Wallace.
Thank you, Chair. Happy to echo everything Councillor Buchanan has said. I wonder if I could just put it in the context of a deputation we had at Giffnock Community Council last week. We had some parents from Isabel Mayor who find it a little galling, shall I say, that all these summer clubs seem to be quite happily going ahead with mainstream schools, and yet we've had to suffer the cutbacks when Isabel Mayor. I don't wish to put a dampener on this, and I'm sure maybe we can get some explanation as to what activities were in place for our Isabel Mayor pupils, and just to make sure that the next time for summer next year that we will be well covered and these kids will be properly catered for. Thank you.
Would you like to respond, Siobhan?
Yeah, so within the Isabel Mayor there was a reduced extended school year, so a number of children and young people who attend Isabel Mayor were supported via there. One of the objectives around the whole summer programme was to try and make it more inclusive, so that children with additional support needs have more options of activities that they're able to participate in. So a number of children from Isabel Mayor did join the Include Me Too club, and a few also joined the Culture and Leisure summer camps. However, other children with additional support needs across the authority and our other schools were also then able to access some of those camps. But I think that that's something that we definitely do want to look at and have this coordinated approach where we're looking at all the different summer offerings there is across the council and making them as inclusive as possible, while still having something for children with the more complex needs that would perhaps need some specialist care and intervention as well.
Thank you. Does that mean that next year we will there will be a concerted effort to make sure that our kids at Isabel Mayor are appropriately catered for?
I mean, maybe if I just respond to that, Councillor Wallace. Obviously, in terms of the changes to the extended school year, that was a decision that was taken at Council in that way. So I think the various briefings that we provided elected members have explained how we've sought to maximise the use of that funding. I think I'd probably pick up Councillor Buchanan's kind of point around the partnership. I think that's crucial, and also the engagement with parent councils. So going forward, I think Ms McColgan's already been having a number of meetings with parents, particularly from Isabel Mayor, about how we design and look at collectively the resources that are available, not just from education. I mean, the focus has tended to be around the extended school year, but obviously there was the wider resource that the council provides in terms of the inclusive support over the summer. So I think it's about looking at that collectively to make sure that within the constrained resources that we have, we support families as best as we possibly can. So there is that commitment.
Thank you. Councillor Merrick, I believe you want to contribute.
Thanks, Convener. Yeah, I just want to go back to the videos. Thank you very much for putting them on. Thanks to Kayla and thanks to Elise. And also, as I'm sort of echoing a lot of what Councillor Buchanan has already said, there's no better testament than the people who've taken part in the activities, and everybody seemed to be very, very positive, having a good time. I would suggest that was money very well spent. And also congratulations to Paul for running the Include Me Too Club, who have been great partners over the years and will continue to be going forward. Also welcome the comments from the Head of Service and Dr. Ratter about provision for Isabel Mayer in the future and how that's been looked at and investigated. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other? Councillor O'Donnell.
Just to echo a couple of comments from Councillor Wallace and from Councillor Merrick. Obviously, we had to make some difficult decisions around the extended school year in the previous administration, and I know we did an awful lot of work to try to mitigate that over the summer. It'd be helpful to get a final view in terms of how many of those children were had services through the extended school year itself, or who went to Include Me Too in those clubs. And, and I know a number went, and I don't have the sort of final numbers. And you could see from the video that some were there, and that it was appropriate for them to be there safely. And I take the point that Siobhan McColgan made about complex needs is much more difficult and to resolve that. So it'd be useful to get final numbers on that. I think previously we have sort of committed to the parents of Isabel Mayer that we would look at two aspects. One was the extended school day for this term and later. It would be helpful to get an update in due course as to where we are on those plans. And then secondly, again, echoing what Councillor Wallace and Merrick were saying, is I know it's still a bit early days, but having clarity on what plans will be for summer activities for Isabel Mayer for next year. I had one resident contact me really asking for as much notice as possible for planning purposes, and I think that we should be mindful of that in terms of how people go about planning their school holidays. So it would be helpful to get reports back from that in due course. Thank you.
I believe that's noted. Yeah, great. Thank you. No more online participation. Excellent. Okay. We'll move on to item 4 on the agenda, which is the SQA examination results. A statement from the Head of Education Services Performance and Provision. It's from Joe McCaig.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. As is tradition at this particular point in the year, it gives me an opportunity this morning to provide you with a brief overview of some of the key messages from this year's attainment within the national qualifications, with further more detailed presentation at the November meeting. Academic term 21-22 has seen the country return towards familiar pre-COVID assessment approaches and an examination diet for SQA national awards. Briefly, some recent history. In 2019-20 academic year, examinations did not take place as a consequence of COVID, with the awards being made on the basis of local quality assured teacher professional estimates and national SQA moderation of pupil attainment progress. In academic year 2021, following the publication of a review of assessment approaches employed the previous year, the Deputy First Minister took the decision to suspend the National 5 examination diet. This was later accompanied by a further decision to also suspend the higher and advanced higher examination diets. In replacement of the assessment diet, awards for academic year 2020-21 were made on the basis of an alternative certification model. The ACM approach, as it was known, was based entirely on demonstrated assessment evidence using locally produced assessment materials, which were moderated and quality assured at a local, regional and national level. This was different from the approach in the previous year, where an element of inferred attainment was utilised. Furthermore, amendments were made to wider assessment approaches, such as internal assessment of practical skills. On the 18th of August 2021, Education Minister Shirley-Ann Somerville announced that National 5, Higher and Advanced Higher examinations would return in spring 2022, with contingencies planned should the assessments not be able to take place. It was also announced that in recognition of the lost learning caused by the pandemic, modified course assessment requirements from 2020-21 would continue, supporting all stakeholders while still maintaining the credibility of the qualifications. Consequently, the 2022 examination diet is the first undertaken by Scotland's learners since 2019. For S6 students, this would be the first time they have experienced that traditional exam diet. Secondary staff worked tirelessly to ensure that all learners experienced high quality learning and teaching throughout the year, despite the ongoing impact and disruption of COVID, ensuring that any learning loss was overtaken and that young people were well prepared for national examinations. Secondary staff provided additional support to learners, including such examples as supported study, Easter study school and Saturday classes. Fortunately, planned contingencies did not require to be employed, and the examination diet commenced on the 26th of April this year, with the outcomes of the assessments being received by learners on the 9th of August. I would like to take this opportunity to make you aware of a few particular highlights at this stage, again with further in-depth analysis being provided in November. At National 5 in the S4 year stage, 77% of S4 pupils attained 5 or more awards at this level. This broadly equates to the performance in this measure in 2019, that last year of formal assessments. At Eastwood High School, the proportion of S4 pupils attaining 5 or more awards at National 5 is the highest ever recorded for the school, at 85%, and the highest recorded across East Renfrewshire in 2022. Barrhead and Wood Farm High Schools performed strongly in this measure too, with St Luke's attainment significantly improving from 2019. At higher level, performance of S5 pupils was strong, with significant improvement on attainment from 2019 for S5 pupils attaining 1, 3 and 5 or more awards, and this was the third ever highest recorded level of attainment in these measures. In 2022, almost half of our S5 pupils, 47%, attained 5 or more awards at higher, whilst over two-thirds of pupils, 69%, attained 3 or more awards. 84% of S5 pupils attained at least one higher. The proportion of S5 pupils attaining 5 or more A awards is the highest recorded since 2019 at over 17% of those young people. Several schools across East Renfrewshire recorded their highest ever performance for S5 pupils at higher, with Barrhead and Wood Farm High Schools attaining their best ever performance for 1 or more and 5 or more awards. Wallingwood High School recorded its best ever proportion of S5 pupils attaining 1 and 3 or more awards at that level. At advanced higher level for S6 pupils, the authority attained the proportion of pupils attaining 1 or more awards, which increased by around 4%, again when compared with our 2019 performance. Eastwood, Men's Castle, St Ninians and Wood Farm High Schools recorded significant increases on the same measure. In April 2022, the SQA confirmed its decision that assessment modifications which were employed in 2020-21 and in 21-22 will continue for next year's presentations in 22-23. It is a time of change in Scottish education, and particularly for national qualifications and assessments. In August 2020, it was confirmed that an independent review following the cancellation of the examination diet would be undertaken, and that was led by Professor Mark Priestley of Stirling University. And the OECD's review of Curriculum for Excellence would be widened to include recommendations on how to transform Scotland's approach to assessment and qualifications. The outcome of the OECD review recommended a review of the approaches to national qualifications and the replacement of the Scottish Qualifications Authority. Subsequently, the Stobart review provided insight for how Scotland could improve the alignment between Curriculum for Excellence and the broad general education and the upper secondary assessments, and considered international assessment approaches to highlight opportunities for improvement to those which we employ in Scotland. In October of last year, following the publication of these reports, Shirley-Ann Somerville confirmed that new qualifications will be developed to ensure that learners' achievements are fairly recognised, fit for purpose and recognise the achievement of all. Professor Louise Hayward, Professor of Educational Assessment and Innovation at Glasgow University, has been tasked to lead a reference group which will be seeking the views of all stakeholders across education, ultimately leading to recommendations for the new system of examinations and qualifications for Scotland's learners. As has become commonplace in the last few years, this oral statement is different in content from previous years, given the multiple changes to assessment approaches which have been employed. While schools have remained open for the academic year, learners and staff have had to overcome ongoing challenges from the impact of COVID, such as absence and illness. For school leaders and teaching staff, the demands of supporting pupils with the effects of learning loss and supporting students at S4, 5 and 6, undertaking formal national assessment for the first time has been a particular focus. I would like to take this opportunity to publicly thank all pupils, parents and staff for their vital contributions throughout another challenging year for all in education, and all should be congratulated for the achievements of all our young people. Thank you, Convener.
Thank you, Joe. Yeah, and I'd like to echo your final statement there about to congratulate the staff, the parents, and above all the children, actually, for the hard work that they've put in to achieve these results. It's very interesting to see and great to hear across the board in all of the schools across East Renfrewshire. When you hear about schools achieving their best ever results, is fantastic to hear. And looking forward actually to obviously a bit more in-depth analysis once you can collate or analyse the results and come back to us in November. Can I ask for any more comments or questions? Oh, sorry, Councillor Merrick and then Councillor Buchanan.
Thank you, Convener. Just to look forward to the results coming in November when we'll have more of a chance to sit down and read them slowly, Joe. Thank you. And again, to echo your comments to the pupils, parents and staff, to thank them all very much for all their hard work, and also to congratulate the Education Department on what already has some great highlights in it for another successful year. Thank you very much, particularly on top of the 3-year gap since COVID entered into our lives. So yeah, thanks very much to all involved again. Bye.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Buchanan.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Again, just to echo many of the comments already made, and thanks, Joe, for the initial report. I think everyone was concerned prior to the results coming out about how things would go because it had been such a turbulent period, both with changes going back to exams. Some children had never actually sat an exam that were then faced with a different diet of examinations and looking at that. And so I think that's a credit not just to our children who have done fantastically well, but a credit to all of our staff in the schools, all of our teachers who ensured that they were well prepared, or as well prepared as they could be. And I think that's testament to a lot of the work that has been done over the years to ensure that we were able to adapt, that we were able to evolve given the different and trying circumstances we were in. And I think the results start to bear that out, and it's been fantastic to get to that stage, and we look forward to the final report on exactly where we are. And of course, the future is going to be difficult again. There are more changes likely on the way, and I know that our teaching staff will be doing everything they can to make sure that our children are always as well prepared as they possibly can be for that examination diet. But thank you all.
Thank you, Councillor Buchanan. Councillor Wallace.
Thank you, Chair. Just if I can just make sure when we get the figures and the infographics and whatnot in November, if we can have some reference to the attainment gap and how we've performed in East Renfrewshire. Thank you.
Councillor O'Donnell.
Thanks, Convener. A couple of points. First of all, congratulations to our children and to the Education Department. They've really shown resilience and hard work through very difficult times. If I was going through this many, many years ago, I don't know how that would impact on me. So well done to everyone involved with that. Just a couple of points. That oral statement was very full of data, and it was difficult to keep up. I don't know if you're intending on sharing a script of that, because it'd be useful to have that information for the record. And obviously we will be coming back to this in November, which we welcome that. I really echo Councillor Wallace's comments on the attainment gap. That's, obviously the headline success is wonderful, but we need to make sure that we're not leaving any child behind. So we'd be very interested to see how we're performing in that. And I know we've been doing a lot of work on that, but it is difficult times with COVID, so it'd be interesting to see the results of that. Did I have another point, or was that it? So a number of residents have queried some of the performance results, particularly on the classic school tables and relative national listings, and they're observing some slippage in some of our secondary schools. Is this something that you're concerned about, or they should be concerned about? Perhaps that's for Mark Ratter.
I suppose my starting point is that, you know, we are always looking, I suppose I would measure it against our vision and what we're trying to do, and we're always seeking to make sure that the young people in East Renfrewshire achieve the very highest levels possible in terms of attainment, achievement, and also in terms of those excellent experiences. The attainment measures are absolutely crucial in looking at that, and if you look at our local improvement plan, we make sort of we're very clear that we want to make sure that East Renfrewshire is the highest performing local authority in terms of those measures. Our schools then will also reflect that, and they make use of essentially the Scottish Government's tool that helps them with the benchmarking of that, and that's called Insight. And the presentation that Mr McCaig will bring back in November will include very detailed analysis by school that will show, if we take, for instance, Eastwood High School's results of 85%, how does that compare to their virtual comparators? So taking children and young people that are similar to those in Eastwood High School, what is the performance like? And I think that is always the question I would be asking. It's been a question that residents and elected members have asked me when I previously had that remit that Mr McCaig now has, in terms of how many schools have we got in the top 20, the top 50. My question is, you know, are our schools performing as well as they could be against, and actually the Insight tool is probably the most reliable way of looking at that attainment measure. It's probably not sufficient on its own. I would say we would also be wanting to point to things like leaver destinations and the quality of the experiences that our young people have in the schools as well. And that's why, obviously, in terms of the performance information we share with you, in terms of our standards and quality report, it's that rounded picture that makes up that overall quality education that, you know, elected members and residents hold us to account for. So we're always striving to improve that. I think I would say I'm not overly worried by those ones that appeared in those tables. I think they can be a little bit simplistic if you don't look at it in the full round.
Thank you, Mark. Des Morris.
Thanks, Convener. I mean, it's really just to kind of acknowledge the comments of elected members, all the elected members that have made in relation to the efforts of all staff in what has been the kind of first year back to some kind of normality. Of course, as teachers' representative, I particularly welcome and acknowledge the comments in relation to teaching staff, but I think we all appreciate that all staff in schools, all our staff, are both teaching and local government, and also the education leadership team, all these efforts are recognised. But being the teachers' rep, I particularly welcome the comments in relation to our teaching staff. Thanks, Convener.
Thank you, Des. Any other comments or questions? Okay, thank you. Shall we move on to the next item on the agenda, number 5, improving outcomes, a longitudinal study of the impact of 1140 hours. I believe this is a report that will be made by Janice Collins.
Thank you, Convener. The purpose of the report is to inform Education Committee of the West Partnership's planned evaluation of 1140 hours of early learning and childcare. The Scottish Government set a transformational agenda for early learning and childcare by 2020, which was published in March 2017. The vision was to almost double the entitlement of free ELC from 600 hours to 1140 hours per year by 2020 for all 3- and 4-year-olds and eligible 2-year-olds. Despite the global COVID-19 pandemic and the decision by the Scottish Government to delay the implementation date to August 2021, East Renfrewshire Council delivered this commitment to all eligible children and families on time. Almost all our partner local authorities in the Glasgow City Region Education Improvement Collaborative, the West Partnership, delivered this commitment too. East Renfrewshire and the other 7 local authorities is keen to explore in detail how this increased early learning childcare offer improves outcomes for children and families by undertaking an evaluation over an extended period of time. Appendix 1, page 7, details the evaluation proposal. Page 8 outlines 2 primary areas of focus: outcomes for children in terms of attainment and development, experiences of stakeholders, practitioners, parents, children and wider stakeholders such as primary practitioners. Page 9 details the research questions and the proposed methodology. Education Committee members are asked to note the planned West Partnership evaluation of 1,140 hours. Thank you, Convener.
Thank you, Janice. Councillor Pragman.
In the report on page 4, paragraph 12, it mentions the Scottish Government has laid out new legislation from August 2023, which means that children born between August and December can defer and would be automatically able to access ALC funding. How will this affect East Renfrewshire, and are we prepared for this implementation? And also in the appendix itself, on page 8 of the overall paper pack, it says that we will not be looking at this research and how it's impacted parents' abilities to work, train or study, and is there a reasoning behind not including that? Because I would have thought that would be a very important aspect to how the new entitlement has affected everyone. So if you could answer those questions, that would be great.
Thank you, Councillor Pragnell. If I can answer the first one, the deferral legislation will impact on East Renfrewshire and all local authorities, and as such the Scottish Government have offered a pilot for programme. We're in the second year of that pilot programme, and I represent the West Partnership as part of that group who looks at the information that comes in from the pilot, to look at uptake, to look at cost, to look at reasons for deferral. Using our information that we've shared at Education Committee in previous years, parents in East Renfrewshire who already have that entitlement to funded early learning childcare if they defer with a January and February birthday, take that opportunity, and uptake is extremely high. So we anticipate that there will be a high uptake, and as such, with my colleague Mr McCaig, we are looking at provision needs, and we are looking at where resource would have to be provided to enable us to provide that legislative change. I think where the challenge lies is that it's not as simple as saying we need a new nursery in A, B and C, because it's very much across the wider estate. And as such, again, my colleague Graham Hay and I, we are looking at how that may impact on the offer we have just now in terms of flexibility, choice and models of delivery for our parents. But again, we await the information from the Scottish Government around that pilot, which will allow us to sort of plan on that regards. But behind the scenes, we are doing our own planning, and we are looking at potential uptake and what that would mean in terms of both capital and revenue expenditure. And for your second point, the Scottish Government have also announced they're doing an evaluation, and they are going to focus on that employability aspect. So it was to avoid duplication that the West Partnership have decided to focus on the outcomes in terms of learners and indeed staff.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Janice. Any other? Sorry, Councillor Wallace.
Thank you, Chair. I think we're all well versed in the announcements that come from Holyrood and the Scottish Government as far as education is concerned, and there's a lot of good announcements made. But as far as the impact on local authorities are concerned, is about funding. Am I correct in thinking that are we still owed money for capital, etc., as far as these 1140 hours and our revenue account, how that's impacted and whether that's been properly covered from Scottish Government? And also in terms of this deferring that is now becoming legal, are we being appropriately funded for that as well from Scottish Government? Thank you.
We still await confirmation of what our funding will be moving forward, and you are accurate in that we did declare a shortfall, quite a significant shortfall, from our original ask for the expansion in terms of capital. And with the support of Education Committee and East Renfrewshire Council, we were able to implement our expansion plan as we felt would be more appropriate for our community. However, we are very cautious on spend because we do not actually know what our early learning childcare budget will be moving forward, and that includes any additionality for the deferral.
Councillor Wallace.
Thank you, Chair. If I maybe just come back on that. I wonder if you could perhaps answer the question as to whether we are still owed money from Scottish Government. Okay, thanks.
I don't think it was ever sort of worded as owed. I think we reported a shortfall because I believe we submitted what it would cost us for the expansion, and the Scottish Government provided us with funding for the expansion, and we've reported to committee and to the Scottish Government that shortfall. But I am not led to believe that we will receive that money. We've had to, you'll know from the early learning childcare reports, we've had to sort of almost skim the budget every year to make sure that we had the full budget for actually this year to be able to deliver the flexibility and models that we do. So I don't anticipate getting money back for previous years. We do know through correspondence that the formula for allocating the money has changed, and it will be more aligned to the number of young folk who will be accessing our nursery. However, as yet, I don't know what that money will be.
Councillor Wallace.
Yeah, if I can just come back in there. It's just to contextualise where we're going to be next year. We have all these commitments that come from Scottish Government, all well intended, I'm sure, but it's how that impacts on our budget next year. I think we all know what we're facing, and a lot of the funding that does come through is ring-fenced to deliver the types of projects that we have here, and yet at the end of the day we end up being underfunded and owed money. That's what I'm reading between what you said to me. I appreciate you've not necessarily said it in black and white. It's just to have that in context when we're faced with the budgets next year. Thanks.
Thank you. Don't believe there's any other comments or questions. There may be one final thing, actually, Janice. Can I just ask about possibly for newer members? It did occur to me that I had to do a bit of research into the West Partnership. Can you actually, or one of the team, provide a bit more information about the role and our participation actually with the West Partnership?
Happy to cover that, Convener. I mean, the paper obviously sets out at a very high level that the local authorities that are involved. East Renfrewshire is one of 8 in that way. There are 3 sort of key areas that the West Partnership is working together on, and its vision, the West Partnership, is one around, similar to East Renfrewshire's, about delivering excellence, equity and empowerment across the 8 local authorities. I suppose that the key thing to sort of think about is that it's about providing that added value beyond what the local authority delivers. We still have the statutory duty within East Renfrewshire to bring about that improvement and deliver high quality education, but it's about that collaboration and about exploring those ways to do that. And perhaps just to give you a kind of couple of good examples of the way that the West Partnership perhaps has added value over the last couple of years for newer members. Particularly during COVID, there was some work that was taking place around developing what's called the West Online School, which is a huge collection of online video resources and online learning materials. All local authorities across Scotland now use that. Every school across the West Partnership has accessed that at different points over the last couple of years, and that's provided a tremendous resource for our staff, particularly during the closure periods. There's also, again, just to try and make it concrete, a very good programme called Improving Our Classrooms, which is about supporting our staff with those pedagogical approaches that make the biggest difference to improve learning and teaching. And it's a programme that's been developed. It's based on research, supported by universities in that way, in one of the local authorities, that has now been shared much more widely, with all 8 local authorities now participating in that. So some of that learning is able to take place. So it's a really good example of that collaboration, whereby you take something that's working well in one and share it more widely. Perhaps given the sort of timing, we normally bring a couple of reports to Education Committee, and I was planning to do that at the next meeting. One around the West Partnership's evaluation of last year's activity, and you'll get a flavour, I suppose, in terms of the difference that the West Partnership makes and East Renfrewshire's role within that, and also West Partnership's improvement plan. So I'm very happy to bring those to the next meeting, convener.
Excellent, great, thank you, Mark. Any other questions or comments? Councillor Buchanan.
Yeah, just to touch on some of the comments that Mark's covered in terms of the West Partnership and the Regional Improvement Collaboratives. The 8 authorities are the same 8 authorities that were involved in the City deal, and it was a kind of stemming from that, looking at how they would work together as the 8 authorities, and thought, well, what else could we potentially do? And at the time there was discussions around where education might go, and the partnerships were put forward as a way of saying, look, we can deliver on best practice to Scottish Government. So this partnership was sent up, and thankfully it's been extremely successful, and I'm delighted that our officers over the last few years have been significantly involved in that partnership and leading the way. Obviously, we already know what we can deliver, but it was about taking that delivery and saying, how can we support others across the area to ensure that we're all making those continuous improvements and delivering on that. And certainly I think the early reports in terms of the West Partnership have been extremely successful. A lot of authorities are looking at the data that we are now able to provide and to share that in order to get best practice rolled out. And I know certainly that Scottish Government at ministerial level, it's highly regarded as being an area whereby we can take the best practice, look at what's been done across the 8 authorities and say, are we all able to meet up with that and make sure that we are all involved in continuous improvement and delivering for children, not just in East Renfrewshire, but across Scotland.
Thank you, Councillor Buchanan. Yes, I agree with you. It's absolutely an excellent body, and for the research, and this is one example, obviously, what we've discussed about the research that they do to make sure we can quantify the policies and the work that we're doing is actually helping us achieve our aims. Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to agenda item 6 now, I believe. The improving outcomes through the Scottish Attainment Challenge funding. And I believe this is yourself again, Janice Collins.
Thank you, Convener. The purpose of the report is to seek Education Committee approval for the proposed Strategic Equity Funding SAFE Plan 2022 to 2026. The Education Department's vision statement, Everyone Attaining, Everyone Achieving through Excellence Experiences, reflects the commitment and expectation that all learners will be supported to realise their potential. The Scottish Attainment Challenge was launched by the First Minister in February 2015. This included establishing the £715 million Attainment Scotland Fund. The Scottish Attainment Challenge is about achieving equity in education, specifically by ensuring every child has the same opportunity to succeed, with a particular focus on closing the poverty-related attainment gap. The Cabinet Secretary set out in Parliament on the 23rd of November 2021 the Scottish Government's plans for the next phase of the Scottish Attainment Challenge, herein known as SAC Refresh. This was developed in consultation with local government and agreed by COSLA leaders. The draft SEF plan takes full account of the National Improvement Framework, East Renfrewshire's Community Planning Partnership Community Plan, the Fairer East Ren Plan and locality plans. The Department's contribution to the Council's Outcome Delivery Plan 2022 and 2025 and the Department's Local Improvement Plan 2022 and 2025 also aligns closely to this plan. Page 23, Appendix 1, the SEF plan, Raising the Bar for All, Delivering Excellence Through Equity, is organised around 3 key themes linked to tackling the poverty-related attainment gap: children and young people's wellbeing, literacy and numeracy, and learning and teaching. In addition, leadership, parental engagement and the use of research and data to support professional learning will permeate across all themes. The plan is split into a 4-year strategic plan with a 1-year action plan. You can find these on pages 31 to 33. The Scottish Government also requires each local authority to set stretch aims. The Education Department, in partnership with our schools, has been setting local stretch aims, known as targets, for some time. This two-way process is part of existing local authority quality improvement processes and very much agreed as part of an interactive and collaborative process. The agreed stretch aims enables Strategic Council, our ODP and our Fairer East End plan, as well as our departmental local improvement plan and school plans to reflect the ambitious and achievable aim to improve outcomes for all learners while closing that poverty-related attainment gap. Robust evidence-informed self-evaluation will enable us to set these stretch aims and for these to be further developed as the plan moves. These aims will help measure the impact and outcomes of the activities that are listed in the plan, and the Department's Quality Improvement Officers will provide ongoing support and challenge to ensure it in terms of improved outcome for all learners. The stretch aims can be found on page 34 and 35 of the document. Some of the national self-evaluation evidence is not readily available to East Renfrewshire at the moment, therefore we are not able to confirm the values of these aims at this time. However, these will be placed prior to the submission date of the 30th of September and shared by my colleague Mr McCaig at an Education Committee in November. Education Committee is asked to approve the proposed SEF plan and ask the Director of Education to bring regular reports to Education Committee on the progress and impact of its implementation. Thank you, Convener.
Thank you, Janice. Councillor Pragman.
Can I just ask, on page 28 it mentions the roles and responsibilities, and it talks about attainment equity gap in relation to gender, ethnicity, lowest performing 20%, poverty and care experienced children, but it doesn't actually mention children who have disabilities, as we know that people with disabilities in general, the attainment gap can be quite high, so it doesn't actually mention a group of pupils that are quite significant, particularly in East Renfrewshire, with how we have ASN hubs, and also Isabel Mayer. It doesn't mention attainment equity for those with disabilities. I was just wondering why.
I'm sure if it's not there, it's an oversight.
Oh, sorry.
It's included as part of the stretch aims and things, so it's just maybe an oversight that's not in that paragraph. I don't actually know the paragraph you're referring to on page 28, but I'll have a look and make a note. But additional support needs children and their attainment is certainly high on our agenda, and you'll see that from the plan and some of the stretch aims. But it's an oversight, obviously, that it's not maybe included in that paragraph. So thank you for pointing that out.
Councillor Wallace.
Thank you, Chair. Just to say, just welcome this paper. I think anything that can progress reduction in the attainment gap. I think, as we all know, the huge differences that education can make to our youngsters for the future is just night and day, and huge savings to society as well in terms of health and just general well-being. So I'll keep it brief. I'll certainly welcome this paper. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wallace. Councillor O'Donnell.
I echo those comments. I think we really welcome the activities that are listed in this paper. Very, very important to, I think, all members in this chamber. A couple of things I'm a little bit curious about and uncomfortable with, to be frank. If I got it right, we're submitting the paper with the plan with the stretch targets in September, prior to this committee actually reviewing or scrutinising what those targets are. Is that correct?
The targets are the areas that we will be looking at are included, so you will be able to, you can scrutinise the areas that we're going to measure, but we don't actually have the values from, like, for example, the Curriculum for Excellence data that is gathered, submitted by our schools at the end of June. It's taken into the Scottish Government, and then they send it back to us to Quality Assure, and that process is still ongoing, so we don't actually have the data, but we have listed the stretch aims that you can scrutinise the areas that we are measuring, because these stretch aims are designed to show the impact of the activities that are listed in the plan. But you are correct in that we don't have the values in, and we won't be able to put them in prior to the next Education Committee, and unfortunately it's just the submission date with the Scottish Government's the 30th of September, and our Education Committee calendar did not align.
Thanks for that. I understand the sort of practical process issues, but it still makes me feel a little bit uncomfortable that these important targets are going to be submitted prior to scrutiny. So I don't know how we can address that concern.
Happy to come in, Convener. I mean, it's been the sort of usual approach in terms of the targets. I suppose have been a bit more operational, as Mrs. Collins said. We've set, I think, for over 10-15 years, our schools have had targets based reflecting the local improvement plan. So they'll have 3-year average targets around things like attendance, curriculum for excellence, attainment, and the targets are essentially made up at an authority level based on the individual school ones. So that if each individual school achieves their target, we'd be very happy to bring those back to Education Committee, as we said in November. Scottish Government does recognise that it needs to go through the sort of due process in that way, but it's essentially the way the paper has been presented today has just reflected the sort of usual practice in terms of the actual setting of the target level. That has been something that has been devolved to the department.
So, and so to be clear, we will have an opportunity to review that in the November committee.
It's fine. We're happy to bring those back, and you can challenge them or have a look at them in that way.
Thank you both. Do we have any other comments or questions? No. Thank you. Sorry, I should apologise to Janice. I didn't actually mention that you were also head of Education Services for Quality Improvement in both of those situations. It's just for the external and for the recording, so people know who you are.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to item number 7. And this is the Education Department End of Year Report 21-22. And I believe this is a report from yourself, Mark, the Director of Education? No? Apologise, it's for... sorry again.
No, not a problem. Thank you, Convener. So the purpose of this report is to update committee on the Education Department's performance as outlined in the end-year report for 21-22. As elected members will be aware from both this and previous committee meetings, the Department has a very strong commitment to continuous improvement and regularly brings reports on various aspects of performance to committee. Indeed, a number of these are detailed in the paper. We've included some links which members may find helpful. So whilst this end-year report is important to consider, I think it is just important to view it in that kind of wider context in terms of there's a number of reports that will detail various aspects of our performance. In terms of the end-year report itself, members will note that it sets out a high-level summary of the wider outcomes, and then separately under customers, efficiency and people, with various indicators included for each of these categories. Just a kind of important point to note, I'd ask members note that due to the reporting periods, some of the data, and particularly some of that, including around attainment, for example, is out of sync. We do have a slight reporting lag with this, obviously, the 21-22 report, but it actually includes the attainment data from the previous year, just in terms of the way it's reported. And obviously, Joe's kind of covered that earlier in the meeting. So in terms of the context, I think it's just really important we also note that while schools and nurseries did remain open throughout 21-22, thankfully, members will recognise the really high level of continued disruption that we did see throughout that year. And I think it's really important we don't sort of underestimate or understate that level of disruption, particularly with levels of pupil and staff absence continuing throughout the year. The Department has maintained a very strong focus on that recovery, with the Building Back Better and Fairer framework setting out the key priorities in supporting children and young people with their learning and well-being, complementing the work that was already underway as part of the local improvement plan. So despite the obvious and very significant challenges, the Department and establishments have continued to perform at a very high standard in our work towards achieving the Department's vision. Just to draw members' attention to a few kind of key points, draw committee's attention to the continued outstanding performance across all the attainment measures, again for last year, which members will be familiar with, and the continued very strong performance in supporting young people into positive destinations. Again, we've continued with our really strong emphasis on customers as we've adapted to the challenges that we've faced through COVID, but continue to do so as efficiently as possible. And I think that's noted through some of the sort of efficiency measures, moving on to that new normal as we've adjusted. And then moving on to the wider sort of people category, I think just one kind of key point that, again, members will be very familiar with is the Healthier Mind service. It continues to be a really invaluable resource, providing support to pupils, families and indeed our staff with their health and well-being. And I think the figures there really demonstrate that strong performance that's continued to have throughout the challenges of the last few years. And then finally, moving on to paragraph 14, we've set out a number of the priorities for the current year, and many of which, as have been noted both in this committee meeting and indeed the previous one, are already making very good progress, and obviously we'll continue to report on that to committee in the months ahead. So, Convener, in conclusion, this report summarises the Department's performance in 21-22 as we continue to recover and hopefully now find ourselves on the other side of the COVID pandemic. As has been noted, it presents a very strong picture, demonstrating the working commitment of all education staff in achieving our vision and that relentless continued focus on our children and young people. So, Convener, committee is asked to note the end of your report, and obviously we'll open up for any questions that members may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Graham. Do we have any comments or questions from members? Councillor Buchanan.
Thanks, Chair. Again, just to very much welcome the report. I think it is an excellent report, and as you've mentioned, Graham, the difficulties that we face, and as we've touched on in just about every paper we've had in recent times, because of the circumstances of the last few years, how difficult it has been, and that's a credit to all of our staff across the authority and in education to ensure that we were still able to deliver on many of the outcomes that are mentioned. And I think what's important as well is to highlight the partnership working even within the council and the breaking down of silos, and we'll look at the care inspector report that we got last week in terms of and when you touch on people, healthy minds, all of those aspects coming together highlight the great work that gets done across the various departments by breaking those silos down and ensuring that we do work together to deliver on the outcomes which are vital. And as we see from the paper here today, that work continues. There is still continuous improvement, and we continue that recovery programme to ensure that we deliver what we can for our children, and that's what's vital going forward. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Councillor Buchanan. Councillor Wallace.
I just come back to what Councillor Buchanan was saying there about breaking down silos, etc., which East Renfrewshire has been very good at, each department working with one another. Just curious to know from maybe the Director if you can give any idea on how he feels the impact of the national, or the proposed centralisation of national care and how that would impact on education within East Renfrewshire. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wallace. I think that's an area that you've raised before at this meeting, and the importance of that close working. I suppose from our perspective as a council, we're still needing to see some of that detail in terms of how that will be worked out, particularly in terms of the children's services. My understanding is that consultation is still to take place, and they're still looking for feedback on the specifics around that. But I think I'll probably go back to Councillor Buchanan's point that what we want to do is maintain that focus on the outcomes. And I suppose what we've got within East Renfrewshire is a very successful model with education and HSCP working closely together, and the outcomes of that recent report, I think, demonstrate that. I think we're the only local authority to achieve an excellence in terms of that evaluation. So, to me, in terms of that consultation going forward, we want to be making sure that that's based on evidence and that we've got in the system.
Councillor Wallace.
We've just been hearing today about the success of the partnership that we have within education with the other neighbouring local authorities. Would it be a suggestion that maybe that would be a useful model for our social care that could perhaps get rid of any concerns that maybe people have in terms of centralisation and to make sure that our education in particular is not affected? Thank you.
Mark?
I don't know that that's a model that's been being looked at the moment. Maybe further discussions would be needed.
Councillor O'Donnell.
I'm going to echo Councillor Buchanan's comments. I think this is an excellent report, and I think we really got to commend the Education Department and all the teachers and staff for the continued focus on continued improvement and lack of complacency. This council has a long track record of very successful Education Department and results for our children. That lack of complacency is so important to make sure that we can continually improve what we're doing, and we have the best outcomes we possibly can for all of our children. So I really commend all of the department for the work they've done in really trying times. I know it's been said so many times, but to actually improve it while facing those difficulties is, a pretty serious challenge. So well done indeed. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor O'Donnell. Can I just finally make one observation and a query? I did notice that there was a marked increase in young people going into employment, and just would be interested to know the education team's opinions or comments on that, if they see if that's something we'll be looking to see if that continues or not. I mean, obviously overall the successful outcomes in employment is just as valid. To reach that figure is fantastic, but yeah. And also the other thing is about the continued focus on digital upskilling of staff in response to the opportunities and challenges offered through remote learning. Does that mean that remote learning will be utilised because it worked so well for some children in the pandemic in the future?
Thank you, Convener. I'll maybe start with the remote learning and the digital. I think there was a lot of good and a lot of learning that came out of COVID for people personally as well as professionally. And we are reflecting on the things that did work well at school level and also at departmental level. And our digital strategy, we're in the process of evaluating that, and we actually overtook many of the outcomes in a very short space of time that we didn't endeavour, that I didn't plan to do. But where do we go from now? And it is about that connectivity. It's about maybe even that wider Get to Zero agenda and how we work and operate in a different way. But that's not to say it's not lovely to see all your faces today and have that sort of intimacy that you get when you meet face to face. And apologies for those that are still on screen. So yes, it is something that we would explore. There is real opportunities where we to broaden the curriculum pathways, where there's maybe opportunities to offer a course or maybe tap into SOS or eSchool, which is another well-known online platform, so that we widen those curricular opportunities, those learning experiences for our young folk, including college and employment. If I can lead into that, I do think we've worked really hard to offer that sort of broad curriculum. You'll know, you maybe don't know, but our schools offer a prospective every year, and it gives the sort of traditional school-based qualifications as well as those qualifications that are offered at colleges and are at a same banding as a National 5 or indeed a higher, but just maybe have a different assessment approach. So I do think we work really hard to show there's no wrong path and there's different pathways for our young folk. And we did have a dip, and you'll know from our DYW report that I brought before summer, a lot of people didn't want to go to college or wanted to stay on at school because of that security during lockdown, but we're seeing increasing numbers again, which can only be welcomed. We're seeing increasing numbers with foundational apprenticeship, graduate apprenticeship, and young folk can learn in different environments and learn different skills and to follow whatever career path. But we've still got a long way to go, and I think just not only with young people, but maybe with parents and communities, because I do, and it's maybe back to what Dr Ratter mentioned earlier, some people still look at league tables and don't realise all the other achievements that are going on. So when we come in, and I know Mrs Graham's nodding as a very experienced deputy head teacher, but Mr McCaig will bring along those insight points that shows all the qualifications our young folk are getting, and things that suit them, suit their needs, suit their learning styles, and indeed suit their desired positive and end destination.
Thank you. Sorry, Mark, would you? No. Yep, I think actually it's an interesting trend, and I think actually the businesses will be happy to see like the kids seeing like the graduate apprenticeships type or modern apprenticeships as being just a very good outcome, as well as university or FE college, whatever, as you said, is their preference. Yeah, great, thank you. Do we have any other comments or questions? Okay, thank you. I believe so. That is the last item on the agenda, unless anyone has any other comments or business they want to raise. Okay, thank you. Thanks everyone for attending. Thanks everyone that's online. Thank you.